I can tell by the look in your eye that you still care for me, but somehow you just won't admit. That's why it's so lonely to see. Now if you have made up your mind.
So, J.D. Crowe's backup from Why Don't You Tell Me So, from the J.D. Crowe in the New South remaster bonus track released the last video. Talked about the kickoff a little bit. And then some people wanted to know about some of the backups, so I decided to look through the backup on the first verse, which is just some great rolling backup. And I kind of realized that everything in there, everything he plays on the first verse of this song, which you just heard, is actually, for the most part, stuff that I've covered in other videos. So this video might seem like an advertisement for my other videos, but I promise it's an advertisement for my other free videos. You don't have to buy anything. So I thought I'd just run down some of the stuff that happens in this verse and tell you which other videos you can find this stuff in if you want to go a little deeper into each concept, because each two-measure phrase really is associated with another lesson that I've made. So you can go as deep with this as you want. So why don't you just take another listen to this example of backup a little slower without the background music, and then we'll just get into it. Okay, so as we go through all of this stuff, I'll show each kind of two-measure phrase, and I'll show it at a medium speed and also as pretty slowly. So hopefully you could figure it out on your own. But if you'd like the tablature, you can get that at patreon.com/EliGilbertBanjo. That's where you can get tablature for everything I post. But otherwise, you can just learn it by watching the video and rewatching and slowing it down, that sort of thing. But the first thing he plays, this first two-measure section on a G chord, is one of the more basic things that you can play on a G chord. So check this out. So I have a rolling backup series from maybe 4 or 5 years ago or something like that, that walks you through the most basic stuff you can play up to, not hugely complicated things, but a little more complex. And I think in the second lesson in that series, almost this exact phrase comes up, and so that's a good sign that the stuff that I'm teaching in those lessons, anyways, is informed by this music that I love. So you can check that out in the part 2 of the rolling backup series. Then measure 3 and 4 also on a G chord. And this one is really just two kind of one measure G licks, right? And that's just a good thing to have in your vocabulary. It's just a whole bunch of classic licks on a bunch of different chords that you can kind of rearrange and put in whatever order you want. And so part of that rolling backup series includes individual lessons for many different chords and one measure or two measure licks for that. So there is a lesson called G licks. I don't know which number it is in the rolling backup series, but it has basically these two licks in there. There's some variations with all of this stuff, but you should be able to see the connection and see maybe sometimes you leave a pause in the measure, sometimes you play eighth notes all the way through, but you want to be able to hear the basic, musical idea that's happening in the phrase. So you can check that out in the G lick lesson. Then after that, we have measures 5 and 6, which are another G chord. There's a lot of G all in a row in this song before we get to anything else. But this one's interesting. It's not in any lesson in particular, but it sounds just like the first two measures with a slight variation. There's just a pinch in there. So listen to that. So as you could tell, that's kind of achieving the same thing as measures 1 and 2. And that's just a really common pattern that JD would play, is this kind of basic G rolling backup pattern, but with that extra pinch in there, right? It just kind of breaks up the rhythm. And that's a huge part of what JD did that maybe veered away from Earl in some ways, was just the places where he left space were slightly different, right? It's these subtle differences that differentiate a lot of these players. So following that, we finally get to another chord, the D chord, in measures 7 and 8. And this one is another lick. Actually, I don't think I've ever heard JD play this exact lick or played this exact lick myself, but it goes in the category of the double thumb or double index, double thumb and double index licks, where he kind of repeats, on the same string with the same right hand finger, which can be challenging. And so therefore, I have a lesson that's, I think, called double thumb licks. You'll see it in the description below, which kind of deals with the technique of these licks and why it's kind of worth it to play it as a double thumb or a double index rather than alternating thumb and index. You can do whatever you want, but there are some benefits to doing those double fingerings. So I haven't done this exact lick, but if you were to check out that double thumb lesson and come back here, it might give you some context as to how to figure it out, how to get comfortable with it, right? If you want to learn it by just watching and listening. And then following that, we head back to the G chord again for the top of the second half of the verse, which is kind of similar to all the other G stuff we've seen, but with one major difference. So that major difference that I was talking about is the transition from a G chord to a C chord, right? We're going from that G chord playing our standard G stuff in one measure. The second measure is all stuff that leads us into the C chord. And I've, taught this lick in context of other backup examples or arrangements or what have you, probably plenty of times, but I don't think I've ever had a lesson that was specifically this type of lick. I have a lesson that is transitions from one chord to another in much more simple terms, so I'll link that as well. But this is more of a real bluegrass language example of doing that. And so maybe that's a good thing for a future lesson. If you're from the future and you're curious if I've made that lesson about transitioning from G to C or from one chord to another with more than just the basic licks, then that'll be in the description as well. And if it's not in the description, then you can leave a comment and say, please make that video, and maybe I will. Then moving on to the next couple of measures, we actually play the C chord. So this is more material that I've talked about in that rolling backup series. There's a lesson all about C licks, and I'm pretty sure this or something just like it is in there. And, there's so many different ways you can play each of these chords, and a lick like this that Earl played this lick or something like it a million times. JD played a lick like this or something like it a million times. There's variations, and then there's kind of micro variations with the fingerings, or maybe which note goes first or which goes, stuff like that is not going to make or break the material. That has more to do with what feels comfortable to you, or just what becomes your habit. But at the end of the day, a lick that sounds like this serves this purpose of being the C chord, being rhythmically interesting, but not so interesting that it overpowers things, right? So you may find that if you watch that lesson, this exact lick doesn't come in there, but that something that serves the exact same purpose, or that gives you enough context to figure this one out, may arise. So that could be worth checking out just for that reason. Then following the C chord, we have what is kind of the beginning of the G, D, G 151 turnaround. And so these two measures, which is kind of like the beginning of the end of the verse, if you will, are really just like one G lick and one D lick. If you were to look at the G licks lesson and the D licks lesson from this rolling backup series, and you were to pick any other two single G licks and single D licks, they would kind of go together just as well. Theoretically, they would serve the same purpose, right? It would tell you the story of the G chord and the story of the D chord just as well. It may be that these are two that go together really well, or they've been used so much that it sounds very natural. But you shouldn't look at it as something special outside of it's just one G lick and one D lick. So it's worth practicing on its own. But if you check out those videos, again, learning to mix and match these things, make your own arrangements, make your own kind of combinations of licks that maybe you haven't heard before to challenge yourself, or to make something that you might think sounds better or more unique to your own, your own voice as a musician. But that's really what it comes down to in a lot of this stuff. Really, is if you want to get good at this stuff, kind of learning to plug and play some of these licks until they feel comfortable. So that's what that little section is really. And then following up that, we actually have, what is kind of just two more measures of G, but really it's leading to C for the chorus. So that sounds like this. And so this is different from our other G to C lick. Certainly, it's not exactly the same material, but you should notice that it starts with material we've seen before in the form of a G lick, right? And then the way that it gets to the C chord is similar to the way that we got to the C chord before, right? It's not exactly the same, but it's the same kind of mechanism with the hammer-on lick leading up to that note C. It achieves the same thing, and that maybe is the story of this whole lesson, is kind of talking about how what the exact notes are rarely matters very much. It's what's being said, which you could look at as a kind of deeper metaphorical concept. But what's being said literally, what are the notes leading to and from, and what are the notes in each measure, and what chord do they belong to? So if the notes are all in a G chord, then it's saying G, right? It's not that deep. And if everything leads up to a C note, and then the chord is C, then it's saying that. But that's what I mean really, is what is the purpose of this? So if you know a lick like that, then that might suffice. But if you kind of find that this is, kind of, I don't know, grabs your ear or something like that, then it might be worth learning this exact version of that lick. That could be worth your time as well. But at the end of the day, that's the backup on the first verse of Why Don't You Tell Me So? And people seem to like the last lesson, and hopefully you dig this. So if you dig this, then let me know if you want to learn more of the backup. There's some up the neck backup on here that's really great, and then there's also an up the neck break that he plays that's kind of similar to the break that Earl played on the original version of this song. So that'd be kind of interesting to compare and contrast as well. I don't know if I need to necessarily make all my videos about this one track, but maybe I do. Why not? So let me know in the comments. If you're listening by now, then you get a say in whether or not I continue on this, because you're the ones that really care anyway. So just let me know if you want to hear more about this track and this backup and all that stuff. But otherwise, that's going to do it for now. So if you want the tablature, patreon.com/Eli Gilbert Banjo. Great way to support these videos and make sure I make some more of them. But otherwise, now I'm going to go check out that up the neck backup. So that's going to do it for now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.